Greetings! Welcome to the fire. We all yearn for that spotlight every now and then, but games like Dungeons & Dragons is by nature a cooperative storytelling game, which means we all need to share that stage. And that's the topic for this following story. D&D the Movie starring this guy, and only this guy. r/RPG horror stories, posted by friend of the DM. Throwaway, in case the Q's comes across this. One of our players has main character syndrome. It is getting increasingly frustrating dealing with this guy, and our DM is too new to really properly recognize and deal with it, which isn't his fault, but it's kind of terrible. We are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of our little group, which is an exciting benchmark. But naturally, as time goes on, we only become more and more aware of each other's habits and flaws. Naturally, our group isn't perfect, but I think most of us have done a great job so far speaking up about our concerns and adapting to feedback. One such player, the youngest of us, still has a lot she can improve on, but has shown a lot of growth over the last few months, while another, who is admittedly the reason our group came together in the first place, seems to have no self-awareness about how their playstyle is negatively affecting the group. They have major main character syndrome. It's recently become more of a concern as our current campaign draws to a close, with only a handful of sessions left. The player recently adopted a secondary character, a DM-assigned NPC turned PC, putting their first on the back burner for a bit as other two players have done before, just for funsies. However, this new character, we'll call him Sam, caters to all the worst parts of main character syndrome. Sam has a tragic past, involving outliving his entire family, as a plot relates magical accident has left him immortal. Because of his past, he never gets involved with what the rest of us are doing. We want to help decorate town for a special holiday? He refuses and goes off alone to sulk, all the while baiting us to get us to follow him and dig into why. We all have a slumber party. He goes to bed early and listens to his dead kid's music box all night. Every night, all the while baiting us to eavesdrop and dig into why. Of course, our DM naturally gravitates towards these emotional solo scenes, always giving into the player's desire for attention, no matter what the rest of us are doing. Just last session, 4/5 of us, plus a major NPC, decided to hang out together and have some fun after a harrowing, plot-related experience of losing our memories of each other. But we got exactly 0 screen time for this interaction in favor of Mr. Sam McSadpants. What makes it worse is that Sam is directly related to the BBEG of the campaign. They're immortal brothers with literal hundreds of years of history together, which means that even though this guy has only been in our party for 3 or 4 sessions, less than a week in game, and even though the rest of us have spent the last couple of months building up a rapport with the BBEG, absolutely none of that matters, since Sam has a connection that no one will ever be able to contest with. Any scene between the party and the BBEG becomes a personal scene between Sam and the BBEG that the rest of us can't contribute to. Not only this, but the solo scene from the last session comes along and reveals that another major NPC from my character's backstory no less, literally my best friend who I come up with special for my character, is also directly related to Sam. And my character wasn't involved in this reveal at all, nor was it ever brought to their attention. So that was fun. Besides this, there has been many instances, both with Sam and the primary character, where Sam's player has interrupted an ongoing scene another PC is having with a stupid quip, usually related how he has no place in the conversation. For example, PC Sonia will be talking to her best friend NPC Kendra about this dude Jake who asked us to get some pancakes for him. This happened before Sam joined the party, so Sam interrupts with a joke about how he doesn't know what anyone's talking about. Who the F is Jake? What's a pancake? Ha ha! Aren't I funny? Pay attention to me. It's annoying, frustrating, and incredibly rude. Kindly shut the F up and leave the talking to people who actually do know what's going on so we could progress this plot. Maybe you can ask questions later and bond with the other players. No? You want to wander off and sulk about your tragic backstory again? F you too, I guess. This kind of monopoly over the story was pretty okay for me at first, as we started off with a smaller group than we have now, and I was a new player and generally not comfortable yet with leading the narrative. But now that we have more players and I have become much more confident in my abilities, Sam's player has not given up any of the floor, which brings me to yet another issue. Sam has no connection to any other PC and makes no effort to make connections, even after the issue has been brought to their attention. He has more personal connections with NPCs he's just met, including NPCs that already have personal connections to other PCs, as evidenced by the scenes last session, than he does with the party he's been traveling with for a week. Sam, and honestly, Sam's player, only ever talks about himself. It sucks. My newest concern now, as this campaign draws to a close, is the new campaign coming up. Our DM is still in the very early planning stages with only a general idea of the setting's theme and starting hook. As we have all been thinking about our next characters over the past few weeks, Sam's player has been by far the most ambitious. Most of us have come up with general ideas for the basis of a character, race/class, while our DM finds his footing in the new setting. But Sam's player has almost entirely fleshed out the new character. We'll call her Rose, complete with many of their own world-building ideas. One of these ideas just happens to be the fact that Rose is horribly cursed, and if she dies, a terrifying, continent-destroying evil will be released. Naturally, her character motivation will be breaking this curse. But even before our DM has planned anything concrete, it's so glaringly obvious that protecting Rose will need to take precedent over almost anything else the party does. This isn't how D&D should work. The player is a perfectly nice person with some excellent improv and roleplay skills. They always are. But God, is it gonna be hard to keep playing with them if we can't get them to care about the other PCs? How do you even confront someone about this? I'm almost dreading this new campaign. Edit. I am not the only player who feels this way. The issue has been brought to the attention of both the player and the DM at least once before, though pretty gently, as the player did lose a close family member to COVID recently. As our DM is still pretty new, he's still adapting to dealing with a player like this, so expectations weren't high to begin with. The other players and I have successfully shut down several interruption attempts in the last few sessions, but it's honestly a pretty exhausting way to play, constantly having to be on our toes because of this other guy. Obviously, after the introduction of Sam, there's not much the DM could have done without reconning the brother of the BBEG part, but rest assured, me and these other players are planning to speak with both of them more directly about the details surrounding Rose before the new campaign begins. Ooh, yeah, that is some definite main character syndrome. But I wouldn't put all the blame here on the player. Some of it goes to the DM here for allowing the situation to happen. The first issue is the most obvious. By focusing in so much on that problem player, the DM is in fact encouraging that behavior. But this could be a pretty easy fix by just not chasing after Sam when they go off to sulk, or when they try to bait the other players with their woe is me monologues. Players who have main character syndromes do this because they want attention and an audience. So just don't give them that attention, or be their audience. Next up is allowing the player to actually take on the role of an NPC who has immortality. If I was in this situation, I would remove this ability as soon as the player took on the NPC as their own. The plot armor of immortality is, well, I wouldn't trust most players with it. Now, speaking as a player, I'm not even a fan of immortality, because without the threat of death, then where's the danger? The drama? Well, the good kind of drama, of course. Alright, now we're on to not allowing the other PCs to contribute in scenes with a BBEG. Ugh, yeah. Now that's a major red flag and issue that you need to talk with your DM about. That's not fair for you or the other players at all. Now on to that upcoming campaign and Sam wanting that curse ability, which can actually be used well by someone else, or an NPC, like an actual NPC. Much like immortality, this can be abused as some pretty convenient plot armor. But anyway, talk to the DM about this. Even if they're new, they should be aware of this issue, especially with a new campaign on the horizon. Usually, I would just let the DM know about this and then let them handle it. But with them being new, and with all intents and purposes, Sam doesn't even seem to be aware that they're being problematic. Maybe just have a talk with Sam as well. I would suggest just having a one-on-one player talk with Sam so they don't feel like they're being ganged up on. Some people have good intentions and are just, sort of blind to this kind of stuff. But you shouldn't let it fester, because this could snowball into even bigger issues if left unattended. You need to remind Sam that they're not the only player there, and to be considerate to everyone else. I mean, you all seem like good friends who want to game together and have an enjoyable experience at the table. And honestly, that's what we all want. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see more content like this. And would you kindly follow the socials posted in the description below. As always, be good, be great, be awesome.